Fellas, we just had UFC 307, quite a cursed main card to be fair, up until the main event when Alex Pereira butchered Khalil Rountree. So we're going to be matchmaking every main card fighter after UFC 307, every fighter that won, every fighter that lost. It was a pretty, I'm going to be honest, it was quite a mid pay-per-view, especially the main card, but the main event definitely carried it. And we'll start off with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Buckley. Now, even though this wasn't actually on the main card, I'm still going to include it anyway because I think this had main card, potential anyway. So Buckley got the knockout over Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in that third round. Kind of got that weird Dricker style where he's got a really awkward mix-up of striking and grappling. Managed to catch Stephen Wonderboy Thompson against the cage and knock him out. So for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, the dude's 41 years old. He's lost a bunch of his recent fights. I still think he's got the, not the potential necessarily, but I still think he's got the capability in the octagon. I don't think he's completely washed. I want to see him versus Randy Brown. Now, there's been rumors going around that Randy Brown's going to be facing Carlos Cortez, but I'd love to see Wonderboy Thompson versus Randy Brown because I think Thompson needs a break from the rankings, because the problem is, if you look at the people ranked below Stephen, he's already beaten most of the guys, ranked below him, but he's losing to everyone ranked above him. Randy Brown, one of the best unranked welterweights in the world, he's coming off a win as well. He's another really good striker, and he only really looked bad when he fought JDM, who's one of the best in the welterweight division right now. I want to see Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Randy Brown. Potential fight night main event. I think Randy Brown, he's one of these welterweights that kind of deserve a crack at the rankings, and if Wonderboy Thompson is going to fight anyone next, there's not really anyone else left for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in the rankings. I mean, he's already beaten Luke, he's already beaten Jeff Neal, unless we give him somebody like Neil Magny, but that doesn't make sense because there's no way that Magny's getting a jumping competition. So I think we'll do Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Randy Brown. Step down in competition for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson compared to his past couple of fights, but another big opportunity for Randy Brown. So I think that's what should be next for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. If not, maybe consider retirement, because the dude is 41 years old. He's lost a lot of his recent fights, but again, he's not washed. He doesn't have to retire. He's not in like a position of like for Nick Diaz where he has to retire. And then for Buckley, I mean, it's pretty obvious. Give him Usman. He called out Kamaru Usman. I think that was a great call out. I think it makes a lot of sense. Buckley's just beating a former title challenger in Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He's on, I think, a 5-fight winning streak in the welterweight division. Just knocked out Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Looks great at welterweight. And he called out Kamaru Usman, who's on a 3-fight losing streak. Former champion, one of the greatest welterweights of all time. And I think it's the perfect fight for him because it doesn't really make sense for JDM to fight down in the rankings, and it doesn't really make sense for Shavkat to fight down in the rankings or anything like that. I think Usman, coming off 3 losses now in a row, I think it's the fight that makes sense. Buckley versus Usman, one of the greatest welterweights of all time versus the guy who's on his come up, and I think the styles match to each other really well. Two very high-level wrestlers. We know that Buckley's a good wrestler. We know that Usman's a good wrestler. They're both good strikers as well. I think their styles will match up really well, and we're either going to see Usman get his first win since 2021, or we're going to see Buckley go out there and, I mean, if he beats Usman, he's going to be next in line for a title shot against Belal Muhammad or Shavkat, so I think we're going to do Buckley versus Usman. Then we had Kayla Harrison versus Ketlen Vieira. Now, Kayla Harrison showed in this fight that she's probably going to be the bantamweight champion in the next 12 months because she looked dominant when she had Ketlen Vieira on the ground. The thing was with Kayla Harrison, she's so dominant when she's got people in control, but it's taking people down that she struggles with. She's really good in the clinch, but apart from that, she hasn't really got the wrestling base. She's kind of like a Sergey Spivak, really good in the clinch, but not really the best wrestling. Ketlen Vieira, I think we're just giving Carol Rosa. Carol Rosa's on a bit of a roll recently. He's fighting down in the rankings for Ketlen Vieira. I think it makes a little bit of sense. Could be a good fight. And then for Kayla Harrison again, just going to be fighting for a belt, innit? I mean, this is the fight that makes the most sense. Juliana Pena versus Kayla Harrison. I'll talk about Juliana Pena being the champion later on in this video, but yeah, Kayla Harrison, Juliana Pena. I think Kayla Harrison's done enough now to win the title shot. I mean, she arguably deserved it after she beat Holly Holm. Now that she's gone out there and beaten Vieira, there's no one else but Kayla Harrison. Juliana Pena called out Amanda Nunes for the 3rd time. That's very unlikely, and it doesn't really look good when you've been beefing with Kayla Harrison. She wins on your card, and you still then refuse to fight her and you pick Amanda Nunes. So I think we do Pena versus Harrison for a title fight, and I think Harrison would absolutely destroy her. And then we had Roman Dolidze versus Kevin Holland. This is where kind of the main card curses started riling up. Kevin Holland broke his rib in the first round, was unable to continue the fight. Bit disappointing. So for Kevin Holland, I think there's a fight that I would really be interested in. Kevin Holland versus Sharaputi Magomedov. Now, Kevin Holland's probably not going to be fighting a ranked fighter next because he wasn't ranked in the middleweight division anyway. I think he's going to stay in the middleweight division. He's not going to be fighting a ranked middleweight because he weren't ranked anyway. He's probably going to be fighting somebody that's unranked. Sharaputin Magomedov has a fight booked for UFC 308 against Arman Petrosian. If Sharaputin beat Arman Petrosian, it's going to get to the point where he's either going to be fighting a ranked fighter or close to the rankings, and I think Holland would be that perfect matchup for Sharaputin Magomedov. There's not going to be much grappling from Kevin Holland. I think it's going to be a predominantly striking matchup. The toughest test for Sharaputin Magomedov so far, but I think this would just be an absolute banger. It's a favourable matchup for both of them. Neither of them have to worry about grappling. The winner can get a crack at the middleweight rankings. It's a good comeback fight for Kevin Holland because Sharputtin's beatable, but it's also a big opportunity for Sharputtin to beat a big name, and then if he beats Holland, get into the rankings. So if Sharputtin Magomedov beats Arman Petrosian and he's not having to wait too long for Kevin Holland, I think we do Kevin Holland versus Sharputtin Magomedov. One of the best unranked middleweight fights you can make right now. And then for Roman Dolidze, I didn't like how he started celebrating after the fight because Holland broke his rib. I think we do Roman Dolidze versus Paulo Costa. Yeah, Paulo Costa should not be fighting up the rankings. He's lost to Strickland, Adesanya, Whittaker, and Vettori. His best wins are Luke Rockhold and Yoel Romero, two guys that ain't even in the UFC anymore. I think he's got to fight down the rankings, and now that Roman Dolidze is on a 2-fight winning streak to Smith and an injury win over Holland, I think we've got to give Dolidze his credit, even though he didn't really deserve too much credit, and I think we give him Paulo Costa. I think he's a good fight. If Paulo Costa can beat Roman Dolidze, he's beating a guy on a 2-fight winning streak, and he can fight up the rankings from there, and if Roman Dolidze can beat Paulo Costa, that's going to be Dolidze's biggest win so far, and that can potentially secure some other top 5 matchups for Roman Dolidze. I know he's already fought Imavov, but I think we do Dolidze versus Costa. Kind of a fun matchup for both of them. Big test for Dolidze. It's a step down for Paulo Costa. I think that should be next for both of them. And then for Jose Aldo versus Mario Bautista, one of the most controversial fights on the entire card, not only for the decision, but also for the way that Mario Bautista performed. We'll start off with Jose Aldo. Originally, I was thinking that if Aldo was to lose, he should maybe retire, but I don't think he should retire. I mean, I think Aldo just needs to avoid Salt Lake City as a whole, because every single time he fights in Salt Lake City, it seems like he just gets pinned up against a cage, and, you know, he ends up losing. It happened with Marab last time. I think we do Aldo versus Chris Gutierrez versus Miles Johns. Now, not Chris Gutierrez, Cody Garbrandt versus Miles Johns. Now, Cody Garbrandt is matched up against Miles Johns, I think, for a fight night later this year, and I think the winner of that fight should fight Jose Aldo. Now, fair enough, maybe Cody Garbrandt doesn't deserve a crack at the rankings, or maybe either of these guys don't deserve a crack at the rankings, but just ignore the rankings for a second. Aldo's probably going to be ranked number 14th come Tuesday because he just lost to Mario Bautista, and I think Aldo versus Cody Garbrandt would be such a good fight. Again, it's that same thing. They don't have to worry about being held up against the cage. They don't have to worry about some new up-and-coming prospect. It's two legends in their own right going at it. Jose Aldo, still very talented these days. Cody Garbrandt, maybe not a top fighter, but he's still got the potential, and if he can beat Miles Johns, I'd like to see Cody Garbrandt versus Jose Aldo. Two legends going at it, kind of like a fantasy fight that's been around the UFC for the past couple of years. And if Miles Johns can get the upset and beat Cody Garbrandt, he's beating a legend. Let's give him another legend in Jose Aldo, because I don't really think there's any I don't think there's any ranked fighters for Jose Aldo now, unless he fights like Montel Jackson, which I don't really have interest in. So I think we do Aldo versus the winner of Cody Garbrandt and Miles Johns early 2025. And then for Mario Bautista, I mean, we've pretty much got to give him Henry Cejudo. Cejudo's ranked a couple of ranking spots above him, even though I don't really want to give a massive step up for Mario Bautista, considering it wasn't the most... You know, it wasn't the best performance, was it? I mean, he barely won the decision, and he kind of just held Aldo against the cage like Marab did. But I think this could be a fun matchup. I think stylistically, this is a much more difficult matchup for Mario Bautista than Jose Aldo, because obviously Cejudo's got the wrestling. He's not too bad on the feet, but you know, he's obviously got the wrestling, which I think Mario Bautista could have problems with. I would definitely favour Mario Bautista in this matchup, but it's a step up in competition for Bautista. He's fighting another legend in Henry Cejudo. It's not like we're giving him a massive step up against somebody like Corey Sandhagen. So Bautista, Cejudo, stick it on a pay-per-view next year, and I think, you know, Cejudo could potentially challenge the grappling of Mario Bautista. Bautista could challenge the striking of Cejudo, and if Cejudo can beat Mario Bautista, then he's no longer going to be a villain in MMA, because everyone hates Mario Bautista right now. So I think Bautista Cejudo should be next. And then for the co-main event, Pennington versus Juliana Pena. Pena beat Raquel Pennington. You've got to excuse me stuttering over every word. It's like 6 AM and I've just had to watch one of the most cursed main cards in UFC history. But no, Juliana Pena got the win. Very controversial win again. The judges were consistently terrible this night. For Raquel Pennington, I think we see her versus Norma Dumont. Norma Dumont just won against Aldana at UFC 306, and I think a lot of people have kind of seen her as a top contender in the bantamweight division, and I think she's earned that spot at a #1 contender fight, and I think her versus Pennington should be next. I think for Raquel Pennington, if she can beat somebody like Norma Dumont, she's probably going to get another title shot, or at least she's going to be about a fight away from a title shot. And if Norma Dumont can beat Pennington, we've got a new female fighter into the mix, because right now in the bantamweight division, the only contenders right now is Juliana Pena, the champion, and Kayla Harrison. Pennington's not going to get an immediate title shot. Amanda Nunes is retired. We need more contenders, so Norma Dumont, give her a shot against Pennington. I think she's got a good chance of winning, especially after that performance against Aldana. And I think that's a good fight for both of them. Then for Juliana Pena, I mean, I just matched her up before against Kayla Harrison. I think this should be next. She called out Amanda Nunes. I just don't understand why she's so like hell-bent on getting that fight with Amanda Nunes. When Nunes retired last year, she was in the octagon, she was in the audience calling her out as well. Nunes has been gone for over a year now, and she's still calling her out. Kayla Harrison, this is the girl you've been beefing with. I say girl, but, you know, she's kind of far from a girl. But no, this is the person you've been beefing with the entire fight week. This is the fight that everyone's been waiting for. And she won on your card, and you call out Amanda Nunes. Another wasted call out for Juliana Pena, but this should be next. I think Kayla Harrison beats her comfortably. Maybe not comfortably, because that performance against Ketlin Vieira wasn't over the top impressive. But yeah, this is definitely next. Kayla Harrison's earned a shot. Her versus Juliana Pena for the women's bantamweight belt. And hopefully Kayla Harrison can improve and potentially save the women's bantamweight division. And then the main event, Alex Pereira versus Khalil Rountree. For the first 2 rounds, I was really impressed by Khalil Rountree. I thought he won the first 2 rounds. He was landing some really good shots against Alex Pereira. Dropped him at one point, I think, in the second round. But then eventually, Khalil Rountree, I'm not going to blame Salt Lake City. I think it's just his own stamina for this. Ended up getting gassed out in that 3rd round, and Pereira just started butchering him in that 3rd and that 4th round, until eventually he managed to drop Khalil Rountree, get the finish after completely butchering him, and he got the TKO in the 4th round. So for Khalil Rountree, he's ranked number 8th in the division. He's probably not going to get a fight ranked above him anymore. Maybe you can say that he deserves a fight ranked above him, which I'm not going to be against. But if he does fight somebody ranked below him, I think him versus Bogdan Guskov makes a bit of sense. Now, Bogdan Guskov, he's on a 2-fight winning streak, I believe. He beat Ryan Spann, finished him. He's ranked in the UFC, I think, number 13th in the division, 13th or 14th. And I think he needs a top 10 fight now, because he's looked really impressive in the light heavyweight division. So I think we do him versus Khalil Rountree. It's definitely a massive step down for Khalil Rountree from Poatan, obviously. But it's also welcoming someone else that's kind of on the come up in the light heavyweight division in Bogdan Guskov. So I think we do Rountree versus Guskov sometime next year. Maybe we give Guskov someone else first, because obviously Rountree's going to be out for a while. But I think this could be a good fight stylistically. And then for Poatan Pereira, there's a lot of options for him. There's the chance to move up to the heavyweight division and fight Jones. There's a chance to fight Aspinall. People have been saying that he might go down to middleweight and fight Dricus du Plessis. I think Pereira should just settle the score with Magomed Ankalaev. This should have been the main event for UFC 307. I still don't understand why the UFC didn't give him a shot against Ankalaev, but I feel like with Pereira, he's kind of nearly cleared out the light heavyweight division, beating Jan Blachowicz, beating Yuri twice, beating Hill, and now beating Rountree. He's on a roll in the light heavyweight division, but there's one name that we all want him to see. Same way that Jones could beat any heavyweight in the world, but unless he beats Aspinall, he's going to be considered the actual heavyweight champion. And I feel like Ankalaev is that guy for Pereira, the guy that's, I think, 19-1, the guy that's fought for the belt and I think should have won that belt in that time, a guy that's beaten Volkan Ozdemir, beaten Nikita Krylov, beaten Johnny Walker, and if he can beat Alexander Rakic at UFC 308, there is no questions it should be next. And I like this fight a lot, because this is by far the most difficult fight for Pereira in the light heavyweight division. But listen, if Alexander Rakic can get a massive upset and beat Ankalaev, who most people have viewed as the next contender, I say we give him a title shot. I know he got finished by Yuri, and I don't really think his ranking kind of displays his actual talent, but if he can beat Ankalaev, that's a big win. There's no one else really there in the light heavyweight division, and it's that similar position where we're giving him another kind of striker like we did with Khalil Rountree. So I think the winner of Ankalaev and Rakic faces Pereira before Pereira moves to the heavyweight division. But that is how I would matchmake every main card fighter after UFC 307. My overall thoughts on the card, it was a bit of a bad pay-per-view. I'm going to be completely honest. It wasn't that great. The main card was cursed. The main event saved it, but let me know your thoughts on the pay-per-view and these matchups. Thank you for watching.